Namaskar everyone. Welcome to this divine journey. Today we are going to have our 14th sessions of Srimad Bhagavad Gita with Sundar Ajanji. So from all of us, I will welcome you all and request Sundar Ajanji to take over and begin this journey to the next level. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Pranam, everybody, and welcome to our next journey on the Bhagavad Gita. So, last session, we saw up to the end of chapter 16, which was the Devasura Sampatti Bhaga Yoga. And the way we are studying Bhagavad Gita is not from sequence 1 through 18, but we are looking at a very practical level as to how we can change ourselves and become fit to understand the Bhagavad Gita. So even before going into the higher concepts of Atma and other things, we want to understand our very nature as a Manava Swarupa or a Jivatma and take it from there. And what we were looking at in chapter 16 was, cleansing ourselves or understanding our Deva and Asura Guna and trying to increase our Deva Gunas and decrease our Asura Sampat or Asura Gunas. Continuing, this time we are going to go into chapter 14, which is Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. And before we go into it, we'll start with the Vedic invocation and please join me in the prayers. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vedvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Welcome back on our journey to chapter 14, which is Guna Traya Vibhaga Yoga. Now that's a long word, but we will break it down and to understand what the Guna Traya Vibhaga means. At the face of it, it looks like Guna means the qualities, right? Everybody has a quality in Sanskrit or even in Hindi, we say Guna. Traya means three. Vibhaga. Vibhaga is the separation or the distinction of. And this is the yoga of understanding the three types of guna. And before we dwell into what the gunas are, I thought I will give you a short overview of the context of the gunas or context of where the gunas fit in to the entire Bhagavad Gita or the Sankhya model. Okay. So we will talk about Prakriti and Purusha, but even before we get into it, we'll talk about what is Sankhya. So what I thought is I'll give you an architecture diagram of Vaidika Dharma as it stands. All of us know or have heard that Vaidika Dharma has Vedas, right? That's why it's called Vaidika Dharma. So Vedas are the foundation upon which everything else in the Vaidika Dharma is built. So we have it's one Veda or four categories of Vedas. It is the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. Now, I added a little note down there. For a person who chants or does yajnas based on the Rig Veda, it's called a Hotra. Hotri. You would have heard Agnihotris, right? Hotras are Rigvediya, sacrifice performers or yajna performers. Advaryu is for Yajur Veda. Udgatri is for Sama Veda. And a Brahmana is for Atharva Veda. Now, even though the Vedas or the four Vedas are big blocks or chunks, they are split for a human consumption into four layers, starting with what is called the Samhita or the mantra. So when you see the Rig Veda textbook, that's all Samhitas. Based on the Samhitas and discussions on the Samhitas, you have the Brahmanas, and furthermore, you have the Aranyakas. Aranyakas are basically discussions. And the epitome or the culmination of those discussions end in the Upanishads. Upanishads are also called Vedanta, the end of Vedas. It's not the end in the sense that it ends there. It's a culmination of Vedas, right? Vedanta. Now, each of these are categorized into sutras, but we will not go into the sutra part of it. But understand this is called the Shruti Prasthana or the Shruti. Shruti forms the foundation and they are infallible truth. Like last time we talked about, infallible means the very idea of being a Hindu is to know that these are Shastras. These are not modifiable and they don't change based on your whims and conditions. They are something that you have to understand are commandments, right? Vedas are infallible. I have been asked a question in the past as to why are Vedas only written in Sanskrit, or some of the Vedas have Rishi's name. But we also understand that Vedas are Sanatana. So when did the Vedas originate and all? First things, Vedas, according to Vaidika Dharma, Vedas are not created. It is called Apaurusheya. Apaurusheya means they are Sanatana, they are not created. Brahma creates the entire universe over and over based on the Vedas. So Vedas are the pramana on which the universe is created, right? These are all laws well beyond the realms of the physical universe. What we read as the Vedas as text is basically understandings of rishis as they received it. Resivati iti risihi. I mean, that's a joke, but received it and gave it to us in a decipherable format for us to understand, right? So it has the mantra form, and these mantras or the richas in the Rig Vedas are receptions by rishis and rishikas, so to speak. And these have subcomponents. Subcomponents are, you have, say, science. Science has subcomponents, like it could be, or even physics. It could be optics, it could be thermodynamics, as subsections that make up the components. So there are six major subcomponents of the Veda, they are Siksha, Vyakarana, Jyotisha, Kalpa, Niruktam, and Chandas. Chandas is basically on the timing of it. Like in music, you have Tal, right? The Talam, one, two, the Adi Tala or Rupaka Tal and all. Chandas is basically the timing in which Rucha is sung or a meter, right? Bhagavad Gita uses two chandas. One is called Anushtuk and the other is called Trishtuk. So we can go into this deeper in a later session. I think Girish ji already had given an intro to this. But for this section, we'll not go into much of the Vedangas. We'll just go into the Darshana. But before we go into the Darshana aspect, I wanted to give you that Vedangas are based on the Vedas. And then Smritis came later. Smritis are basically taking on the basis of Vedas, the law and order of that time and age would be formed. And it changes with desha and kala, which changes with time and place. Shrutis are applicable and they closely follow the Shrutis. So the Smritis follow the Shrutis. Okay. It could be Manusmriti or the Parashara Smriti, Narada Smriti, Yajnavalkya or Vishnu Smriti. And Bhagavad Gita is called the Smriti Prasthana. So among there are three Prasthana three. For the Shruti Prasthana, you have the Brahma Sutra, Upanishads. Smriti Prasthana, you have the Bhagavad Gita, and Nyaya Prasthana, you have the Brahma Sutras. So this is Prasthana 3. Now, Smritis, there's a lot of confusion as to do's and don'ts, but again, you have to look into Smriti as applicable for a time and place, and for Kali Yuga and for your place, what Smriti applies is for you to follow. But any Smriti or any word that doesn't follow what is said in the Veda, if there's a counterbalance between what Veda says and what Smriti says, Veda always trumps. So that is your rule, right? Veda is always higher than the Smritis. Simple. Now, there were other seers or other so-called, other scientists, so to speak, or other visionaries who took the Veda and created the model of the world or of the creation of the universe based on that. And there were six great stalwarts. One person was called Gautama. So he created a Gautama Nyaya, right? Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Samkhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. Nyaya, Gautama Nyaya is all about understanding truth. And it is very important to understand Nyaya because even now when we talk about lawyers, we talk about Nyayavadi, right? Now, Nyaya, I won't comment on the current present definition of Nyayavadis, but I'm talking about the Puranic or the Vedic version of Nyaya, is understanding truth to the core and defining a problem as it is. Like it has to be a perfect definition of problem. And the idea is once you understand through reasoning and logic, everything else falls in place. So Gautama Nyaya is all about logic and reasoning, and there is no place for Ishvara in it. Right? There is no God or how God created the universe. It's all purely based on a very rational version of this is how it is. Right? That is Gautama Nyaya. Vaisheshika is the atomic model of the universe. So Kanada, who's also called Ulukabhatta, or Kanada, formulated a model saying that the world is made of tiny little particles called Anu and Paramanu. The words come from Vaisheshika. All these Anus, two Anus form a Dvayanu, three Anus form a Trayanu, and they keep on building on each other till they form a tiny fiber. Many fibers form a string, many strings form a blanket. So it's basically examples, right? But he was one or the earliest one who talked about a very atomic model of the universe. There also, there is no mention of Ishvara as the creator, but it's about the physical creation of the universe. Achetana Tattvavada. And then I'll jump and come to Purva Mimamsa, the fifth one on the list. Purva Mimamsa is all about karma. So we talked about Vedas. Vedas have two bhagas, two portions. I know this is extremely heavy for you. Bear with me. It will get simpler as we go because if this is heavy, then Bhagavad Gita is going to be even heavier. So we have to understand this part. You can go back to the video or recording and listen to it over, but you have to get this understanding right. So Purva Mimamsa is all about karma and karma kanda and performing those karma kandas to elevate yourself. The core belief, to make a long story short, is I do the karma and I get the phala, which is every karma has a phala, karma phala, right? So I do the work and I get the fruits of the work. And Mimamsikas went all the way to say that if I am the performer and I am the bhokta, I am the receiver of the karma phala, why do I need an Ishvara? There's a story about it where Shiva comes and changes their mind and all those things. But long story short, that is the core belief of Mimamsa. That is also Nirishvara. I mean, I wouldn't say there is Nirishvara. They say we don't need Ishvara to explain the world. Vedanta, which is Uttara Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa Sutra is created by Bhadarayana or Vyasa, right? Brahma Sutras, so to speak, which actually takes up the Vedas and proves it beyond doubt that the subject matter of the entire Veda is Brahman and Brahman alone, right? It goes into absolute Jnana Kanda and shows without doubt that all the references, whether it's Vayu or whether it's Agni and other things, it's all about Brahman and Brahman alone. So, and now we'll come to where we are focusing on, which is the Samkhya and Yoga part, right? Now, Sankhya and Yoga are similar philosophies. There's only one subtle difference. Samkhya was formulated by a great Muni called Kapila Muni, right? And Yoga by Patanjali Mahamuni. They form the same model, but the only difference is Samkhya doesn't count Ishvara. Yoga does. Yoga says Ishvara is real and true. Sankhya is a Prakriti Purusha model, which will show. So if you look at Hinduism and atheism and all those things, out of the six darshanas here, four darshanas don't talk about Ishvara. One, which is Vedanta, talks about Ishvara but as a temporary stop, like the X factor which is solved later. Whereas yoga and yoga alone talks about Ishvara. And now when the West or the East or all those people say that yoga has nothing to do with Hinduism, wrong. Yoga has everything to do with Hinduism. That is the only one that talks about Ishvara being the pramana. And shloka, I mean, the Sutra 27 of the first Adhyaya says Tasya Vachaka Pranavaha, which means the establishment of yoga is an Om. right? Om is the basis on which all this is there. So first, that is the abode. So you have to remember that yoga is totally full and full Hindu or full and full Vaidika. Plagiarism is happening, but for us to understand, we should not fall into their myth that it's complete. It's universally applicable, no doubt. It's like mathematics. All mathematics that is being used today is Indian mathematics, right? So all the numbers that are being used, 1 through 0, 1 to 10, the decimal system, calculus, which was found in India 250 years before Newton, and you have the binomial theorem, the polynomial theorem, all those things are from the Vedas, and you can go beyond it. Trigonometry also from India, Pythagoras theorem. We can go into this endlessly. But as Indian kids, you yourself think that numbers that we read today are the Western. It should not come to a point where we think that yoga is Western. So that's why I'm saying Yoga Sutra and yoga is highly Vaidika and its core Vaidika. Now, coming to Samkhya Yoga philosophy. Bhagavad Gita heavily relies upon Samkhya Yoga philosophy or the Sankhya model, Prakriti Purusha model. But here in Bhagavad Gita, it takes up Samkhya with a Ishvara. The Sa Ishvara Sankhya, Sa Ishvara Sankhya is Bhagavad Gita model. Now, the Bhagavad Gita model of Sankhya, when I say Sankhya model, please think of it from now on as Bhagavad Gita model of Sankhya. I won't have to go back and forth. So it's based on Prakriti and Purusha, right? Now, Prakriti, or let's start with Purusha, is consciousness, according to Kapila Muni, according to Patanjali, and according to Bhagavad Gita. It is pure consciousness and has nothing to do with matter. It can neither be created by matter, it is not a part of the body, it's not a property of the body, and it's not a product of the body, right? Purusha is ever existing universal consciousness. Prakriti is insentient, meaning inert matter, right? And there are 24 components of Prakriti. Now we'll see what the 24 are. And the beautiful play is this universe is an interaction between Prakriti and Purusha. Now, when you look at Prakriti and Purusha, for a mind, it's very dry and it's hard to understand. So you can think of Prakriti and Purusha or the Leela between the two as the dance between Parvati and Parameshwara, the eternal Purusha and the eternal Prakriti. And the beauty is in this, they are the Ardhanarishwara. Ardhanarishwara is basically the unification or the inseparable nature of Prakriti and Purusha. Inseparable. So what is, like there is no distinction between Brahman and Maya or Prakriti and Purusha. Even the Brahma Sutra says Ahikundalavat, meaning like a snake and its coil, the power of Brahman and Brahman are one and the same. It's hard to distinguish the two, right? So that's why the Ardhanarishwara, not Artha, Ardhanarishwara. Now, coming to this, before we deep dive into Prakriti, I wanted to show you a very beautiful concept, the iconographic concept of Jagannata Mata Maha Tripura Sundari, okay, also called Mula Prakriti. Mula Prakriti is the highest Prakriti. Now, if you have not read the Lalita Sahasranama, now you'll be wondering why Lalita Sahasranama is coming in a Gita session. It is all interlinked. But once you have to understand that you are upgrading yourself, we are in the process of not reading a book, we are in the process of upgrading our jivas. So Lalita Sahasranama is a must read in your lifetime. And it encompasses all the Upanishads and the Vedic teachings and even the Bhagavad Gita teachings and a whole bunch more than that, right? So it talks about Prakriti as the Dhyana, Dhyatru, Dhyeya Rupa, Dharma, Dharma, Vivarjita. Like she is the Dhyana, like the meditation, object of meditation, and the meditator, right? Now we won't go into the Triputi part of it, but the next line says, she is also Vishwarupa, Swapanti, Taijasatmika, Sukta, Prajnatmika Turya, Sarvavastha Vivarjita. These two lines, like I'm showing you here, Vishwarupa to Vivarjita, is the entire essence of Mandukya Upanishad. Done in these two lines, Mandukya Upanishad is the essence is given to you here, right? And we will visit this probably at the end of the session today, but I have to revisit this. But for our discussion today, we're going to talk about this, the distinction between, okay, I'm going to show you the drawing or the photo here. Now, if you look, you can see Jagannatha Mahatripura Sundari sitting there, and she is sitting on Shiva, right? And the cot or the table in which she's sitting, or the chair, has four legs, and each one is a devata. One is Brahma, one is Vishnu, one is Rudra, and the fourth one is Ishvara. And the mancha is called Sadashiva, right? It's a very powerful and a core image that will actually play into what we are going to discuss. This is all with relevance. Okay. Now this is Panchamanchadi Samstita, right? Panchamancha is she's sitting on a pillar of five. And when I first read all this, probably like 20, 30 years ago, I did not understand how Rudra, Ishvara, and Sadashiva are different. I always thought Rudra means Ishvara, Ishvara means Sadashiva, they are the same. But there is a subtle difference. So here, if you look at the graph here, Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra are called Saguna, Sa-akara. They have guna, which is a quality. I mean, they have kindness and compassion or anger, and you name it, but they have a guna, Sarvaguna Sampannaha. And Sa-akara, they have a particular form. Brahma has four heads, and Vishnu is lying on his, Adisesha, and Rudra, he has a Trishula in his hand, and all those things. They have a guna akara, and each one has a, what do you call it? A function. So Brahma is Srishtikarta, Vishnu Sthitikarta, and Rudra is Samharakarta, right? And then you have Ishvara. Ishvara is Saguna Nirakara. Ishvara has the guna, but there is no akara, there is no form, only qualities. He is apara karuna sindhu, meaning he is the infinite ocean of mercy. But there is no seeing of Ishvara. Now here you see Ishvara has like five heads and he's sitting, but that's more of a picture for still our level people to understand and appreciate the guna. And then you have nirguna nirakara. Now this is where we are getting at. Nirguna, meaning there is no quality. Nirakara, there is no form. If I ask you about space, what is the form of space? And what qualities does space have? It's very hard to say. It's impossible. Same thing, we are going to concept that is even more subtle than space. It's extremely subtle for the mind to understand and grasp, right? So these are all very subtle distinctions. So if you have to go over this over and over for you to come to the Purusha aspect, right? And once you come to Purusha, then you understand how Purusha interacts with Prakriti. And that's why I'm spending some more time here to talk about all this. I know it's hard to understand, but it's important. That's why I'm spending more time on this. Okay. Now let's go back to the shloka here, which talks about Srishtrikartri Brahma Rupa Goptri Govinda Rupini Samharini Rudra Rupa Tirodhana Karishwari Sadashiva Anugrahata Panchakritya Parayana. Meaning this Mula Prakriti or Parabadharika Jaganmata Mahatripura Sundari, she herself is all this five. Like she functions as Brahma when she is producing or when she is doing Srishti, Vishnu to the Sthiti, and Rudra for Samhara. The other two is Tirodhana and Anugraha. Tirodhana means revoking, Anugraha is granting, right? So she has all those five functions, and it is the same Brahma, Brahman and Mata together. That Shiva Shakti Swarupa, as you speak, is this universe, right? In Samkhya, it is called Prakriti Purusha. In Bhagavad Gita also, it's called Prakriti Purusha, right? Now, I said there are 24 tattvas of Prakriti. Now, we kind of briefly saw this in section or the session 3. We'll revisit it. So, what are the 24 tattvas? Is the Pancha Mahabhuta. This universe is made of 5 components, which is Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Apa, Prithvi. For those who want it in English, is ether, wind, heat, flow, and solid. Right. Now I said heat, flow, and solid instead of fire, water, and land because I'll come to you. Think of it as big. All of you understand the Big Bang theory, I hope, and how the universe was created according to modern science. Before Big Bang, there was nothing. It was a singularity, and then out of the Big Bang happened, and then the stars and the quasars and all those the quarks, they came together. But the first thing that exists is called space or ether. Now the Western world did not have a word for ether before, and they call it ether because of the word akasha. Akasha is not empty space. Akasha is a medium through which sound or vibrations travel. That's how X-rays, the vacuum between here and some far off supernova, there is a medium through which that light travels, and the X-rays travel here. It's called Akasha. When the Big Bang happened, there was immense pressure, right? Pressure or the force is called wind or Vayu. Force. There are four types of forces: big force, small force, gravitational, electromagnetic, right? The force is Vayu. It's not the wind that blows here in this world. It's Vayu. Vayu makes everything happen in the universe. Vayu is the one that lifts everything, right? And when there is immense pressure, what happens? Heat is produced. Agni is heat. And after heat comes the flow, which is Jalaja Vayu or Jalajaha, which is hydrogen. Jalaja, anything that flows. And from that comes the solid, Prithvi. Prithvi is not silicon dioxide. Prithvi is anything that is stable, firm, the firmaments, right? So anything that's stable is Prithvi. Prithvi Tattvam, right? Each of this has a quality. Now, if you go back with space, space has a quality of sound. Sound travels through space or through ether, akasha. Now, wind has both sound, qualities of sound, and touch. Agni has these two, plus you can see it visibly. It's heat. You can see it, fire, right? Fourth, apaha has taste added to it. And last but not the least is Prithvi has smell. And this is how the universe is. The universe, the inert universe, has these five kinds of sensory exposures called the tanmatras. Tanmatra. And for a jivatma to understand this tanmatra, it needs inlets, it needs inputs. And those inputs are the indriyas, jnana indriya. Shrotra, Twak, Chakshu, Rasana, and Grana. All of us know it as eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Okay, I get the input. I know the universe exists, but how do I interact with it? If I'm a machine, I have inputs like my keyboard and mouse, but I also need an output like my screen, right? So, how do I interact with the universe? That is through your speech, organs of speech, which is your vak, pani, padam, payu, and upastha, which is speech, hands, legs, excretion, and procreatory movements. Now, these form the 20 components, and there are other four. And I'm coming to this, please bear with me. Is Manaha, Buddhi, Ahamkara, and Chitta. Mano, Buddhi, Ahamkara, Chittani, Naham. Might have heard this, right? They are very, most of you will think that Manas is sentient, Buddhi is sentient. But what do you call it? Samkhya says neither Manas nor Buddhi nor Ahankara, not even Chitta, is sentient. They are inert. In the presence of Purusha, in the presence of consciousness, they act in a like they are thinking. You understand? So there is a difference. The real power or the real source is Purusha or Atma, and the four, which is the subtle body, acts or comes alive in the presence of Atma. If there is no Atma, then Mano, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta are just inert, as inert as the body itself. So once you understand this, then we can go into the gunas. Hope at this point we are clear on the 24 tattvas of Prakriti. Now we saw the 24 tattvas, I won't go into that. Now, what makes this 20? If this was like a blueprint, think of the whole thing. Everybody has this Panchabhutas, everybody has eyes and ears and nose, and everybody has the Mano Buddhi Ahankara. Now, then everybody should be like a robot, like acting exactly the same. What gives us that distinction, that uniqueness, is the three gunas. There are three gunas that Prakriti has, and this is not external to Prakriti, this is intrinsic to Prakriti. That is why it is not counted as one of the 24 tattvas, because this is like the nature of Prakriti is Trigunatmika, right? Interestingly, when I was or when I was reading the Upanishads also, I used to see that the three gunas represent the three colors of many of the animals that would have been in Vedic age or even now. Horses come in three colors: white, black, and brown. Cows come in three colors, same thing. And you have the bears, you have even cats and dogs mostly are in three colors: white, black, and brown, or the combination of it. So I think the examples might have been taken in these, from the domestic animals, but the idea is there are three components. Don't go by the color, but go by the components of it. There are sattva, which is purity. It represents purity, represents balance, it represents serenity. And the whole chapter, as we go into the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, is the definition of the three gunas. So I won't give out too much of it now, but I'll just give you a highlight. And Rajas is all about activity. It's about making things happen, ambition, and the things, emotions that come along with that, which is greed and overpowering and ego and anger and all those things. And there is tamas. Tamas is inertia. It is about non-understanding. It's about ignorance. It is about lethargy. And every person has all these three in some aspect or some percentage or the other. And everybody needs all these three. There is no way that you can be 100% sattva and no rajas and no tamas, because then you won't be able to go to sleep, right? Even for you to fall asleep, you need some tamas. Your mind has to go into that shutdown. You have to have some activity for you to at least go and eat and do all those things. But the question is, how much of this gunas that you allow to affect your judgment or affect your bias is the question that Bhagavad Gita asks you, right? Three gunas are always there. Let's say you're sitting with five people in a room and they are discussing multiple things about politics, about movies, about things. If that interaction is affecting your mind, and if it's leaving you as a worse off person at the end of the conversation, then you have to be worried. If you have the mental balance to sit in a room with people shouting and still not be affected, then you have attained nirvana. You have attained that high level of maturity where you can go anywhere and be free. So that is what Bhagavad Gita is trying to teach you. It's trying to tell gunas exist. Go beyond the gunas and become free. Nistray gunyo bhavarjuna. I'm going ahead, but nistray gunyo bhavarjuna means go beyond the three gunas and become free. And that is going to be the aim of where we are going with this uh, discussion. Now, you'll ask me, why do I care about all these three gunas or the five bodies and the 24 tattvas and all? It is a mechanism for us to understand the Jivatma and its interaction with the world. I thought I'll give you an example more from the examples that we know. If I look at a human body, it is not a single model, right? If I start to study, the skeletal system is a completely different model than the nervous system. The functions are different. Even though they fit in the same body, it's different. The nature of bones is different from the nature of nerves or nature of the circulatory system, the veins and the arteries, right? All these have to function together for the entire system to work. I cannot think of muscles functioning by themselves without the nerves or without the respiratory system, right? So thinking of the stula sukshma karana shariras, or thinking about all the panchakoshas and thinking about 24 tattvas, don't be confused. You don't have to understand all of it for you to be an expert in Gita. All you have to know is take the portions that apply to you at that stage in life to get you to the next level, to get to that maturity. And that's where we're going. So let not all that 24 tattvas and other things worry you or make you sleepless. You don't have to mug it up. There is no entrance exam for anything. There's only an exit exam. And that exit exam is called jnana. And once you understand that, you're free. Simple. So the models will always be there. For you, it is to understand the next step, which is understanding the three gunas and how you can get freed of them. That is the chapter 14. And this is a long intro to chapter 14, but I think this is an important intro because 14 and 17, which is Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga and Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, both have their foundations in the guna itself because it's the same thing. Okay. Having said that, at the beginning, I told you we will revisit the Purusha and Prakriti. Now, how does Purusha fit into this whole thing? We talked about Prakriti. Prakriti is 24 tattvas, it's inert. Think of I have a coffee mug and I have a calculator and a typing machine or something of that sort sitting. Now, they don't move by themselves. Now, there has to be something that makes them move, right? So, what is that X factor? What is that Purusha that you're talking about, or what is this consciousness you're talking about that is making all this move? Now, that's a good question. So, Kapila Maharshi, or even Patanjali and Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the same model explains it as to how non material consciousness and inert matter interact. Now, the law is called Andapangunyaya. Andapangunyaya is basically it's a symbiotic relationship between two people. One is a person who can see but cannot move, cannot walk. There's another person who can walk but cannot see. So the person who can walk has the person who cannot see on his shoulder, and the person on the back who's on the shoulder directs the person who can walk to go straight, move left, or keep away from the pet or whatever. So between the symbiotic relationship, they are able to actually carry on a huge journey. This is an example, right? Same way, the combination without matter, consciousness has nothing to enjoy, nothing to interact with. And without consciousness, matter is useless. It's just matter. It cannot even move. It's insentient. So when they come together at certain conditions, because of prarabdha, because of the gunas, and because of other things, of deva anugraha, they interact with this world and elevate themselves to go to the next level of mukti. And the entire trapping of the Atma happens because of Ajnana. The release of the Atma happens because of Jnana. And between these two, Ajnana and Jnana, is the interplay of Prakriti Purusha. Right from chapter 2, Bhagavan will talk about Purusha Prakriti, Melanam, right? And all of karma is basically to get rid of that three gunas, or the trapping of three gunas, and releasing you from it. All the dana and dharma you do, all the, what do you call it, tirtha yatras and bhajan, kirtan, whatever you do is basically to purify your mindset. You purify your antakarana. Atma, realize this. Purusha is never affected by anything you do because Purusha is always pure and has no feeling of pain. But it lends itself to Prakriti to make it feel like there is pain and joy and happiness, right? All that is in the mind, antakarana conversation, mano buddhi ahankara. So there you can feel the pain and all those things. Simple example: a person feels pain, like there is pain in the body, right? Let's say let's say some pain, chest pain or hand pain. When a person is in coma, they induce or they put anesthesia before a heart surgery. The person goes under the table, and even if there is excruciating pain of cutting open the ribs and doing a heart surgery, you're unconscious, you're oblivious to it because the mind is not connected or asleep to even feel that pain, right? So as long all that pain and feelings of pain, I won't say pain itself, but feelings of pain is all in the realm of mano buddhi ahankara, not even chitta, mano buddhi ahankara level. Ahankara pain is different from the manobuddhi pain. Ahankara pain is all self-induced. It's not real pain, it's imagined pain. We'll come to that in 17. When we come later, we'll talk about how ahamkara pain is different from the bodily pain. Okay. Now, I wanted to bring you closer to what I left off when I was talking about Mahatripura Sundari. Panchapratasana. If you see the words here, Panchapratasana, Panchabrahma Surupini, meaning Jagannatha or Devi or Prakriti is sitting on a seat of five preta. Preta means dead bodies, right? Lifeless bodies or dead bodies. The five levels of dead bodies here are Panchakosha, because all the Anandamaya Kosha, Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, they're all inert and dead, and she is the one who is riding on the body. Now, when we think of Kali or when we think of, Chinnamasta and other things, it's very frightening. You see Kali Mata standing on either a dead body or a Shavasana, right? But really speaking, we are missing the point. Shava Asana means rider of a corpse, right? It is not frightening. I'll tell you why it is not frightening, then you'll understand. Shavam means anything that has no life. Now, my car has no life, but the moment I get into my car, it comes live. I'm the rider of the car. I'm not the car, I'm the rider of the car. So I can take it, move anywhere I want, come back. The moment I leave the car, it becomes lifeless again. Now, what is that one tattva in your body? When it enters you, you become life, full of life. When it leaves you, you're dead. That is called Atma. She is the life force. Okay? So when you say Prethasana, it doesn't mean rider of a corpse. It actually is the life force in you. Nothing to be afraid of. Right? Life force is called Prethasana. And many people just take and twist this and make, completely nonsense out of simple definitions. So Panchapretasanasina, Panchabrahma Swarupini, Chinmayi Paramananda, Vijnana Ghanarupini. So this is the first one is what I wanted to tell you. The interaction. She is the Purusha in the Prakriti. So she is also Prakriti and Purusha. Second one is Vishwarupa Jagrani. I will go into on a later date because we are coming close to the question answer time. But this is the complete Mandukya Upanishad, where the Jivatma goes into four states when it is in Jagrati, Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, and Turiya Avastha, in the four states of it. So we'll go into that later. So today we will do two shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita, the first two of chapter 14, and then we'll open it up for question answers. Right. So shloka 14, chapter 14, shloka 1. Shri Bhagavanuvacha param bhoya pravakshyami jnananam jnanamuttamam yajñātvā munayas sarve param siddhimito gataha. So it says, or Sri Bhagavan says, Param bhuya pravakshyami. Hey, bhuyaha again. So I'm going to tell you, jnananam jnanamuttamam, the greatest of knowledge. It is the greatest of knowledge, meaning he's epitomizing it and preparing Arjuna that this is not something to be taken lightly. This knowledge is the highest of knowledge. Why? Because it is the key that can set you free. Yad jnatva, knowing which, munayaha sarve, all the munis, or all the people who have strived for it, right? We're not talking about freeloaders, we're talking about people who work for it. Munaya sarve, param siddhi mitogataha. They've attained the highest level, right? Siddhi, the highest level of accomplishment. Idam jnanamupashritya mama sadharmyamagataha sargepi nopajayante pralayena vyatanti cha. So here Bhagavan gives you an assurance that we just talked about earlier. Idam jnanam upashritya, knowing this jnana, upashritya. Right? Ashrayam means to take refuge in. Upashritya, to understand and fully believe in and to take refuge in this jnana. Mama sadharmya magata, you will come and become of my own nature. Meaning you will merge in me or you'll become like me. Right? Sarge api, no, na upajayante. Sargepi no upajayante means you will not be born when the new evolution or the new cycle of universe starts, meaning the Jivatma will not be trapped into another cycle of birth. Pralayepi, pralaye na vyatanticha. When the world is dissolved, when the universe or the Mahalaya happens, the Jivatma doesn't perish or doesn't get lost or doesn't get wandered. Now, that is the importance, and he kind of leaves you with that hook as to this is the importance of the Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, right? And there we will stop with it and then we'll open it up for question answers. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
So thank you so much, everyone. So,
Thank you so much.
and ending of this session with condensed study material to go through it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So
So
we'll
thank
see you
you so
again,
much,
Ji.
everyone. Shubh Ratri. See you next time.
Shubh Ratri. Pranam.